episode number 168 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Dr. Aumatma. Dr. Aumatma is a double board certified naturopathic doctor and endocrinologist in practice for close to 15 years. She specializes in fertility and is the best-selling author of 2 books, Fertility Secrets, What Your Doctor Didn't Tell You About Baby Making, and Infertility, Struggles, Secrets, and Successes. Dr. Aumatma was awarded the Best Naturopathic Medicine Doctor Award locally in 2015 and 2020. And recognized as the top Women in Medicine doctor in 2020 and 2021. In addition to supporting couples through individualized care in person and long distance, Dr. Aumatma also trains practitioners who want to specialize in fertility. She has been featured as the holistic fertility expert on ABC, Fox, CBS, KTLA, MindBodyGreen, The Bump, along with being interviewed for countless podcasts on topics of fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum health. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Aumatma.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here, Michelle.
So nice to have you. And we've spoken a couple times on social media. We finally made it to the podcast and
Yay!
talking, and we had a great pre-talk, and I'm very excited to get started. But before we do so, I would love for you to introduce yourself and talk about your background, how you got into doing what you're doing.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a naturopathic doctor by training. I also have a board certification in naturopathic endocrinology, which basically means hormones done naturally, holistically. And for the last 10 years, I've focused my practice on supporting couples trying to conceive because I went through my own path with this. I was married to someone, didn't realize that, I should have thought of it, but I didn't realize at the time that I was going to want to have children. And then I looked at my partner and I was like, oh God, I married the wrong person because there's no way. Like, I'm not reproducing with this man. And I was like, I wasn't quite 35 at the time, but I was definitely like, it was playing in my head, this idea that our fertility massively drops off of a cliff at 35. That's kind of what I had learned in naturopathic
That's
school,
what we learned.
So I really came to that. I kind of came into that relationship with like, oh my God, what am I doing? If this isn't the one, then I better figure my stuff out because I need to, A, am I going to ever have children if I don't meet someone right away? And B, will I actually be able to when I meet the right person?
Yeah,
so
right.
I kind
Good
of
questions,
went,
you know?
yeah, and it kind of sent me in a deep rabbit hole of looking to see what was the research? Where were we with maybe being supportive of fertility after 35? And most of what I found was very negative, but I found like little glimpses of hope. And I started to put it together within the context of naturopathic medicine, which like when we were in school, we learned barely anything about fertility. It was probably like 1 class or 2 classes out of a whole semester. So when I was doing the study, I was like, oh my God, but there's so much research about this and this and this and this. And really like putting together the map of what can be happening under the surface that hasn't been considered or hasn't been looked at. And then I walked out of that research. I essentially, it was like 9 months of me like doing this, like growing this baby within myself. And then I finally started talking about it and people were like, oh my God, maybe you can help me. And I was like, oh gosh, okay. I guess I signed up for that. And it's like, I had a lot of resistance in the beginning, but it's been 10 years. I've really never looked back. I love doing the research. I love like having, like really figuring out how to tweak it for each person and each couple that's sitting with me,
Mm-hmm.
and really like taking their fertility kind of on a fast track to success, because a lot of times they're told, oh, the IVF path is the fast track, right? You think you're going to
Mm-hmm.
walk in and walk out. Like, here's my
Right.
baby.
That's right. That's
um,
right. It's a lot of
or
people think, okay, that's like a sure thing.
yeah, yeah, and then they like go through two, three, four cycles, and by the time you're going through that, you're like, wait, what? This was supposed to be the fast path,
Right.
and then often like natural medicine is looked at as the slow path, but in reality, if you're doing natural medicine effectively, it can give you tremendous results very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But really, to be able to frame it from the perspective of like, we've gotten to the root cause, here are the things that we need to tweak.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there's five root causes. What are going to be the biggest transformers to your fertility? Because we can spend years and years on all the other things, but what's going to get you the results fastest, right? So that's
Yeah.
become
Yeah.
the little bit of my approach, is like really wanting to have people have access to this from a place of, this isn't, doesn't have to take forever. It can be really, really
Mm-hmm.
effective. And you can pair it with other modalities. You can pair it with
Right.
IVF. You can really like put your plan together, and that may look very different from someone else's.
For sure. And I think that it's really important for couples to have a team of
Yes,
different people, different
absolutely.
perspectives, because those different perspectives are everything. Because one perspective will tell you definitively there is no cure, there is nothing you can do. And then there's something called unexplained infertility, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. And it's kind of like, is it really unexplained, or is there something going on, right? Is that like, it's just, all that means is I don't know from my perspective.
Yes, exactly. And it is unfortunate that's even allowed to be a diagnosis be in some ways,
Mhm.
because unexplained infertility, first of all, infertility doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't tell us what's
Mhm.
going on under the surface. It just means
Right.
you literally couldn't conceive. It doesn't
Right.
mean that you couldn't carry the child to term. It doesn't mean any of the other things. But
Right.
yet,
And it
infertility is
really
this.
doesn't mean that you're infertile. And that's like that's why I don't love that diagnosis, because it could mean that for actually more rare situations where people really are like they don't have a uterus, that happens, and there are certain things that are really specific genetic, but most of the time it just means it's delayed. It doesn't mean that you're infertile. So
Yeah.
the diagnosis of infertility is another one that I get very frustrated
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that word is just terrible. It doesn't mean anything. And then you like take this label on and you think like
Exactly.
this is a forever thing, when most of the time it's not.
Yeah.
There's very few people that I would actually say are in quote unquote like technically infertile, where they may not be able to have their own child in their own body.
Hmm. Right.
That doesn't mean they don't even have to go on to having children, right? Like there's lots of other
Right.
paths to parenthood.
Yeah.
But that scenario is like so few and far between,
Hmm.
that we really shouldn't be using that word, period. And then
Yeah.
to add to it, this, what you were talking about, like
Unexplained.
unexplained infertility, that's just like the doctor has essentially just admitted that they have no idea what's going on with you. But that should be a big blinking light of, you better
Yes.
go find who can give you an answer, not like,
Right.
oh, let me just go on with this process that the doctor is saying, oh, I don't know what's happening, but this is going to fix
Or-
it.
Right. Or let's try this, or let's try that.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, well, if you didn't
Shot in the
know it
dark.
was a heart attack, you're probably not going to take heart medication.
Right.
You could be having anxiety.
Right.
So
Right.
in no other realm do we think that unexplained is totally acceptable, but in when it comes to fertility, it's like we've slapped on these labels that just aren't saying a whole lot of anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you do have somebody who comes in with unexplained, and maybe you could think about like some people that you've worked with, they've come to you and they have no idea what's going on. What are some of the things, and I know this is a very range because it's specific to the person, but what are some of the things that can cause unexplained infertility that people are not aware of?
Yeah. Well, I think the big ones that I feel like maybe to a certain extent people are over aware of is egg quality, right? Like we've so focused so much on like how do I improve my egg quality? Is it my progesterone? Right? And
Hmm.
those are the questions that I hear so many women asking all the time, but often even not going deep enough to figuring out why those things are an issue. So
Hmm.
if we think of it as like layers of an onion and we just have to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and oftentimes we get to things that are lesser known issues like gut health,
Hmm.
or calcium and potassium imbalance that is then going to not have the right signals going in and out of the ovary to actually produce
Hmm.
good quality eggs.
Mm.
Or sperm, like, oh my God, can we talk about the male side? Like
Yes.
all of the issues that can underlie male fertility or sperm health that may not even be detected in a semen analysis. So oftentimes guys are told, "Oh, your sperm look great." There's several layers to quote unquote great, which is one layer, which is the assumptive layer of if you're going down IVF, you need very few sperm and you need very few sperm to actually be normal. So a lot of times reproductive doctors are saying, "Oh, your sperm are great." That just means your sperm are great for IVF. It doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily mean your sperm are actually great. So you might
Right.
take that to a functional medicine doctor or an acupuncturist, and they might look at it and say, actually, this is not that great. You have some work to do.
Hmm.
Or the second layer, which is, hey, everything looks technically normal, yet something is still out of balance. And unfortunately, those things aren't always quantifiable. So there are other tests that we can do to help assess what's happening under the surface for even the male partner, that are then contributing to whether or not someone's able to conceive.
And also, we had spoken in our pre-talk, you had talked about one of your patients who has tried IVF and hasn't had 9 cycles. I'd love for you to talk about that because it's an example of all the different it's an example of what you
All
get
of the
told by
different
the
factors.
doctor and what happens over and over and over again, the same exact thing. You keep continuing the same thing and not trying something new. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that because I think it's a great example for people to hear.
Yeah. So for her, she had 9 IVF cycles, and I just met her like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And she was telling me her story, and I'm looking at her hormones, and like the quick view of her hormones would have told me, oh, everything's fine. Like literally everything's fine.
Hmm.
But we don't stop there if we know that someone's had years and years of issues conceiving. So I said to her, okay, tell me more. And she's like, well, I went through all of these IVF cycles. I was like, great. Failed IVF cycles are a really great assessment tool to understand what might be happening. So and like, God bless her heart, she literally remembered the outcome of every single failed cycle. So she was
Oh.
like laying out for me. She's like, oh, on the first cycle, I got 4 eggs. This is what happened. This is how many fertilized. Then they tested them. They didn't turn out to be good. And then the second cycle and third cycle. And she literally like laid it out. And I was creating a chart while she was talking so that I could really look at, is there a pattern? Like, where is the breakdown happening? Is it happening when the eggs are retrieved? Is it happening when the egg and sperm meet? Is it
Hmm.
happening after that? Is it happening in the development of the embryo? So as I was tracking through, I was like, look, by the time that in her last 3, 4 cycles, I was like, you started out like, sure, they're not retrieving a ton of eggs from you, but they as they got into more cycles, they actually had changed the ratio of how many eggs they were retrieving. So by the end of her ninth cycle, they were actually getting like 10 eggs, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But she like barely was fertilizing. It was getting to like day 3, day 5 embryos, 1 to 2. And I was like, that's a really significant drop off. So let's
Mm-hmm.
trace it back. And we kind of traced it back. And I was like, the pattern that I see the most is that there's this conversion issue. They get the eggs, they don't turn into embryos. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens between the egg turning to embryo? And she was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, I guess that's where the sperm come in." And I'm like, "Ding,
Mm-hmm.
ding, 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 ding." And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, "But they said the sperm are normal." And I'm like, "Yeah, they're not normal if the
Mm-hmm.
embryos aren't being created."
Mm-hmm.
And and then I like proceeded to ask her more, and she was like, I was asking her about a specific test called the sperm DNA fragmentation. And that's where they're testing the sperm to actually see the DNA makeup of the sperm. And a lot of doctors don't love this test. I don't know why.
Why? Yeah,
Uh,
that's why I would wonder why, but
I think it's a little bit of like, it's a test that hasn't gained momentum because there isn't enough data from the perspective of our more conventional counterparts. When
mm-hmm.
you actually dig in, there's actually a fair bit of data on this test. So there's a little bit of a disconnect. And I think this is just like something new comes out on the market. You have the doctors that are going to be early adopters, and then the eventual followers, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're in that phase of like, this test is probably 5, 7 years old. It's on a slow and steady rise of more people understanding it, more people trusting it, and more
Mm-hmm.
data coming out as people use the test. So it's kind
Right.
of a someone has to feed into it in order for us to have more data points. So I think we're getting there. Hopefully, we
And
will get there
how
soon.
easy would it be for people to get it?
So this is where a lot of people are relying on their doctor to give them the test.
Okay, got it. Because some doctors are going to be okay with it, and then some doctors are going to push back.
Yes. Yeah, and you as the client or the patient have to be the advocate for yourself sometimes
Mm-hmm.
and say, "Hi, is there any other tests that you could be doing?" And
Yes.
oftentimes the doctors aren't thinking of it, right? Like they're not thinking, "Oh, we should really look at DNA fragmentation,"
Mm-hmm.
because from their purview, the male may have phenomenal sperm,
Right.
phenomenal looking sperm.
Yeah.
So it's really like that point where you say maybe A, I need a different set of eyes on this, or
Mm-hmm.
B, I need to just push and push and push till my doctor gives me the test that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, like in most states, fertility is out of pocket anyway. So look up sperm DNA fragmentation. There's only like 2 labs in the country that offer it. They ship you this like big container
Mm-hmm.
that's basically nitro.
Mm-hmm.
You get the sperm, you put it into their little sample thing, put it back on ice, and send it back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like that's kind of the best way to get the test. You're in control of the process,
Mm-hmm.
and most of these companies aren't necessarily like in doctors' offices where the doctor's like, "Oh, here's your kit, go do your test."
Yeah.
Anyway, like they're going to make you do this, order it online and do the whole process. So just do it, put it in
Yeah.
your own hands. And I don't do the test for every male because it's pricey. It's probably in the 700 ballpark,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
which is a lot of
up there.
money,
Yeah.
but it's way less expensive than 9 IVF
Oh,
cycles,
yeah.
right? So,
Good point.
so it's a little bit like, okay, maybe you've done 2 or 3 cycles,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to a point of like, hey, there's some funkiness happening. Why aren't we getting any embryos? That's where I would be like, okay, it's time to like figure out if there's a problem.
Right.
The other case that I often suggest doing that test will be people that quote unquote have unexplained infertility, but everything on the surface looks quote unquote normal or optimal even. So you have a woman with super amazing hormones, you have the guy with super amazing sperm, and you're like, well, something must be going on because this is year 4. Like we got to figure out something here.
Mm-hmm.
And often we need to just look deeper of egg quality and sperm health, and we'll find some answers. The other thing that I see a lot, because we were talking earlier about other underlying diagnoses
Mm-hmm.
or other underlying things,
Mm-hmm.
endometriosis
Mm-hmm.
is
Oh, yeah.
so rampant.
Mm-hmm.
1 in 3 women with endometriosis struggles with fertility,
Mm-hmm.
and often the fertility issue is the only thing that will be her symptom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit
Right,
of
that is
like,
key
you
because I
know,
think that for the majority of people, they will have cramps, really severe cramps. They'll have like really specific symptoms, and then sometimes it's completely under the radar. Like you don't see
yes,
anything. And the thing with endometriosis is that the only way to find out if you have it is through surgery. I mean, it's minor surgery, but still laparoscopy. I mean, it's something that you'd actually have to opt to do in order to figure it out.
yeah. And this is another thing. Not every doctor is going to suggest it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're not even exploring it.
Mm-hmm.
So, this, like, knowing which part of the process might indicate endometriosis. For me, it's usually egg quality, where you're not getting high enough eggs that survive
Mm-hmm.
outside of the body. Like
Right.
they're like, oh, we had like 12 eggs developing, but we only harvested 5. What
Mm-hmm.
happened to the other 7 eggs?
Right, right.
You might consider, or implantation issues. So everything developed great. You have a bunch of embryos, but nothing takes.
Mm-hmm.
One of those issues might be kind of a red flag of endometriosis and just looking under the surface. Um, the other thing I've seen lately, and I'm still testing this out, so this is a little bit of a theory.
Mm-hmm.
There's dried urine testing that I will often do on women,
The
and
Dutch
I'm
test?
Dutch tests,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And have seen now for the last few years, most women with endometriosis have a particular pattern on that test.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like,
What
could
does it
this
look like?
be? So estradiol will look normal. So
Mm-hmm.
you get, you know how you see on Dutch Complete, you'll see the breakdown of all the hormones.
Mm-hmm.
So DHEA looks great, testosterone looks great, estrogen looks great in all 3 of the buckets. So estrone, estriol, estradiol
Mm-hmm.
all look within optimal range. And then you see all of the metabolites being off the chart.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's become a red flag enough of, A, I think these metabolites might be contributing to inflammation,
Mm-hmm.
making more of the endometriosis like symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
But B, a lot of the women that have that pattern, I'm like, you need to go get tested for endometriosis. And 80-ish% of the time, they're testing positive for endo.
Wow, that's interesting.
Um, so, again, still in theory, still
Yeah.
testing it out.
Yeah.
But I've been picking up on the pattern a little bit that I'm like, could this be a way for clinicians to be able to screen for
Mm.
endometriosis when there is no other screening,
That's
right?
true.
Like
Yeah.
go under a laparoscopic surgery and
Right.
figure out if you have endometriosis.
Oh, totally.
So, yeah, so I think that's what we'll see. And I should call up some of the docs at Dutch and see if they also have seen this pattern or if they would consider why this could be happening. I'm kind of curious now if that
Yeah.
is,
I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be good because they see it all the time as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very interesting condition. It's similar to PCOS. There's a lot that is unknown about it, but there's a lot of links that people see, and one of them being autoimmune conditions. And I actually spoke to Dr. Vidali recently, and he was talking about how even before, like, so the unexplained infertility could be that basically the embryo is being attacked before it even implants, before there's any pregnancy. So you don't even know if you've created embryos in your body, if there's fertilization happening and it's just not implanting, or the body's kind of attacking the embryo. So to even get to the point of pregnancy, so you may be trying to fertilize and not even know it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so fascinating. I think there's like so many underlying things. And I say this often, it's like, it's a miracle that babies are in our world,
Yeah,
right? Like,
totally.
there's so many things that have to click perfectly in place
Yep. And you learn
to
about it once
help
you're in
a
this
child
field. You're
come
just
to.
like, whoa, there's so much.
Yeah, yeah. And until you're in this field, you're like, oh, just babies are everywhere. What do
Yeah,
you mean? Well, like, this
totally.
shouldn't be a struggle.
Hmm.
Yet, like, when we take a step back and just think of like what a miracle it is for every single piece that had to align
Hmm.
for a child to come to full term, be born, I think it's just phenomenal. Like, we have so many things that could go wrong
Yeah.
that it's amazing.
Yeah, there
So
are so
I
many
think,
things.
yeah, so from that perspective, it's like really having someone who can understand all of the steps of what could go wrong, but also like what needs to be optimized then
Hmm.
to make that not happen so
Hmm.
that you can carry a child to term is so important.
And I know that the gut health and any kind of autoimmune condition is huge. You can actually get your autoimmunity in remission. Like I've seen it happen through diet alone is
Yes.
incredible. So talk about that because I know you see that a lot because you work with a lot of people on gut health. Talk about the
Yeah.
importance of that and how it can really put certain conditions that you can never imagine putting in remission in remission.
Yeah. Like, autoimmune is very interesting because it's our immune system being overactivated. And most of the time, we're looking for the answer at the level of the immune system.
Hmm.
However, when you trace it all the way back, especially in the functional medicine world, it's like gut health is the core
Hmm.
of not only immune system, but literally everything, right?
Hmm.
Your gut is responsible for are the different hormones being metabolized through the liver? Are they
Hmm.
being excreted through your intestines?
Right.
Is there like, are all of those processes working? And is the microbiome on point? If the microbiome isn't functioning or in a good state of balance, it's preferring one type of immune cells over another. So the microbiome plays a role. Then we talk about the integrity of the gut lining.
Hmm.
If that's inflamed or under attack, then the immune system is getting activated to
Right.
respond to it.
Yep.
So there are many layers to gut health which are affecting hormones, fertility, autoimmunity, and being able to address and heal all of those things. And it doesn't have to take forever. It
Hmm.
just needs to have focused intention on healing and restoring balance.
Yes,
And it can
absolutely.
be it like I've seen it for myself. So a year before I finally had a child, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do my whole process and I'm gonna like figure out what's going on with my hormones. So I put myself through the system. And
Hmm.
I interestingly had at that time started to have this severe pain in my abdomen. And I would literally like double over in pain every night.
Wow.
And um, I finally decided I was like, I need to do some testing. So I
Hmm.
started doing all the gut testing. Turns out I had 3 or 4 food sensitivities
Hmm.
that I had essentially created out
By eating
of
too much of it?
yeah, by eating, like I started myself on a protein shake and a green drink that I thought was like supporting my fertility plan. And the green drink had mango powder, and the protein shake had mango, and then I was combining it with um like a milk that was sunflower oil, had sunflower oil in it. So those were my two like big sensitivities. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, it took me so long to figure out because one, I was doing these things for my health, but two, I was like, I literally had to pull out every single thing that I ate in the course of a day
Yeah.
because when the results came in, I was like, mango? I haven't had mango in years. Like, I eat that
Right.
when I go to India, and that's it. Like, mango is like such an Indian fruit, you know? Um, I was like, I haven't had mango in so long. I don't understand. And apparently, like, I had chosen these shakes because they were sugar free. They were sweetened with mango.
Wow.
So
That's
I would
great.
have literally like never known. And I don't usually drink nut milk, and I had added this nut milk to the protein shake like, oh, this tastes better and it's going to be good for me. So just like all the little things that we don't anticipate, right?
Right.
And then to like trace it back, I also never was a drinker, and I had started having wine to balance my stress or like relax
Balance my
the
stress. I
year
love that.
prior to all of this. So
Right.
I had damaged the gut lining, I had damaged the microbiome. Then I added to it something that I was doing every day that my body thought it was under stress and under attack. My immune system started attacking it, and that was literally like the fight in my abdomen. And my hormones were out of whack, my cycles were down to like 24 days. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
I have to figure this out. And 3 weeks 3 weeks to turn it around. Like literally, from the point that I realized the sensitivities, figured out what they were. Of course, I had already cut out wine, but like healing the damage from all of that,
Yeah.
rebalancing my microbiome. And in 3 weeks, the pain was gone. The next cycle I had was cramp free, had a
Wow.
normal cycle instead of like this elongated 7 day
Yes.
period. And then that cycle ended up being like a normal 28-day cycle. And I was like, oh my God, like it can be this easy,
Oh,
this simple
totally. And that's
to,
what's so empowering. Like stories like this to me are so empowering because, I also like the reason I got into this is because of going like the acupuncturist after 12 years of me struggling and having irregular periods and not having any answers and really getting to the point where I think a lot of us do is that we think that there's no answers. There's absolutely no way. This is just the way our bodies are. End of story. And that's not true. There's so
yeah,
much we can do. I mean, obviously, there are some very few cases where a lot needs to happen, or it's very rarely like that's just the condition. But most of the time, we can turn this around. Just
yeah,
taking out
yeah.
certain things that are irritating the body. I think that that's key. That's even better than not having the full nutrition afterwards because it doesn't matter what you eat, you're not going to absorb it
Yeah,
correctly, and your body, it's
absolutely.
just a whole cascade of events that happen of inflammation and problems that are like way beyond the gut. So just finding like what are you sensitive to is huge.
Yeah, that is a game changer for
Yeah.
most clients. And one of my clients who was not seeing me for fertility, but this is before where I was doing hormones, not just fertility. And she was in for menopause, perimenopause, and weight gain. And she had gained 40 pounds over the last 2 years. She's like, I eat paleo. I was told that this was a great diet for weight loss. I've been doing this for 2 years. And we did a food sensitivity test on her. She was literally reacting to her entire diet
Oh
was
my
like
God.
beef,
Wow.
chicken, kale,
Oh,
literally like everything that she had put into her body was seeing as not safe.
wow.
And took it out. She came back like 4 weeks later. I didn't recognize her. I was like, "Do I have an appointment with you?" And she's like, "Yeah." It's like even my daughter doesn't recognize me.
Wow. That's
And
incredible.
she had dropped off all of the weight. She was feeling
Wow.
better. She's like, this woman was 50 something, and she was like, "Oh, my joints don't hurt anymore.
Wow. That's
I'm like
incredible.
all of this brain fog gone." Right? So like we have so many stories of miracles that seem like miracles, honestly, because
Hmm.
there's not that much of a miracle. It's just like you're eating what your body is aligned to and
Yeah.
like not reactive to.
Yes.
And for those of you guys listening, one of my main tips for everyone is rotate your diet. If
Hmm.
you ever get to a point where you are like attached to one thing and doing it every day, you're probably going to have a reaction to it at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
Depending on how high or low your level of gut health, it might be a longer time or a shorter time to sensitivity,
Hmm.
but it will eventually turn into a sensitivity.
Yes.
So, really, like putting in that rotation is the key.
Yeah.
It means if you love whey protein powder, which might be okay for some people, put in a hemp shake, put in a brown rice protein, whatever. Like just find the ways to put in rotation.
Hmm.
Or a lot of people get into the health kicks like, oh, I'm gonna eat kale every day, or I'm gonna eat quinoa every day,
Hmm.
whatever it is. And like really when we don't have the rotation is when it's essentially like getting a small amount or a small hint of something every single day is sort of like being exposed to a bacteria
Hmm.
at a small level every single day.
Hmm.
And then your body starts to think, wait, should I be reacting to this? Should I be creating immune cells to this? Should I be trying to figure out why I am seeing this bacteria again and again that shouldn't
Hmm.
be there?
Yeah.
And then the immune system it gets activated and is like, whoa, let me go do something about this. And that's where the sensitivities really start to domino.
Right. So it could be healthy foods, but if you eat it all the time, you develop a sensitivity to them. And sometimes the way to not have it is to take them out of the diet and then reintroduce them back eventually, but still
Yeah.
continue that rotation.
Right. Or just rotate. Like if your gut is completely healthy, or even if it's not, like just having rotation of the things that you feel are super healthy. And I
Hmm.
still struggle with this sometimes because like you start to like your taste buds start craving the same things.
Yeah, you get used to
So
it.
like I could literally eat kale all day long. Like if someone gave me a bowl of kale with some olive oil and garlic, like
Hmm.
I'd be so content.
Yeah.
But I have to like pause my natural tendency and just like remember that the gut wants variety while the brain wants consistency.
Hmm.
So it becomes like, oh, I just wake up in the morning and every day I eat oatmeal in the morning.
Hmm.
And then I eat this for lunch. And then I eat this for dinner.
Yeah.
And like the brain gets some sort of stability out of that, which is great.
Hmm.
But our guts are not made for that. Our
Yeah.
guts are made for a lot of different varieties of food.
Yeah, that's why Eat the Rainbow is like such a great way to say it. And it's true, like just trying the different things and really that too much of a good thing is not so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Even too much, like the best things,
hmm,
too much of it can be not so good.
for
Yeah.
sure. Well, I think that this was really great information. And for somebody who wants to work with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're on Instagram, holistic underscore fertility underscore expert. So holistic fertility expert on Instagram. And our website is holisticfertilityinstitute.com. We are maybe I'll send you something, like we can give a free gift to
Oh,
anyone that
awesome.
wants
Yeah.
to just like want more. And I think I'm actually thinking of two things. There's one that's called the I think we called it like make super sperm or something like that, for the guys. So you can like print this out and give it to your partner. Because I feel like if there was one mission that I could just get everyone aware about, it would be like men are in this too. Like
Yes.
it's not just on you. Don't
Yep.
bring this onto yourself and carry it around like the 80 pounds of weight that you're carrying.
Amen.
But get your partner on board, and it has to be fun, right? Like they have to like see, even if the labs are normal, even if um they feel fine, which is what most guys are like, I feel fine. And then you talk to them and you're like, but you're tired all the time and you
Right.
don't sleep well and you're not working out like you used to and you're getting this like abdominal weight. Let's do something about it. And they're like, oh, that's not just my age. I can feel better than this.
Right.
Like, yeah, and you can have a better sex life. And they're like, yeah, sign me up for
Sign
that.
me up.
Sign
Totally. You
me
gotta know how
up.
to get them to sign up. That's the way. Awesome.
Better sex and super sperm. That's how you'll get your
Exactly.
partner on
Exactly.
board.
Exactly. Totally. Such an important point, though, really, because a lot of people do, a lot of women put it all on their own shoulders. I know that because I see it with my patients all the time. And great point on the DNA fragmentation, because that's a whole other point, to seeing if the sperms are actually able to create healthy embryos as well. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for all your great nuggets, really good stuff. And I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.